The top U.S. nuclear commander says he would refuse nuclear strike orders from President Trump if those orders were illegal. General John Hyten says his first obligation is to follow the law, despite what any commander-in-chief tells him to do. Watch.
I provide advice to the president. He'll tell me what to do, and if it's illegal, guess what's going to happen?
You say no.
I'm going to say, Mr. President, that's illegal. And guess what he's going to do? He's going to say, what would be legal? And we'll come up with options of a mix of capabilities to respond to whatever the situation is, and that's the way it works. It's not that complicated.
Well, the general's comments came as part of a larger conversation, as you saw there, and it's happening while Democrats are raising concerns about the president's command of nuclear weapons, and not just Democrats, some Republicans too. Critics say the president's past comments show how he's prone to lash out at enemies like North Korea. Let's bring the panel back in. We've got with us Julian Zelizer, Errol Louis. Let me go first to content and then to context. Errol, first to you. Is it as simple as he says?
Well, in some respects it is. I mean, the thing everybody has to keep in mind is that there are two scenarios that involve the very grave issues that are under discussion here. I mean, one is when there's some reason that the military has to allegedly, or so to speak, wake up the president in the middle of the night and say, the country is under attack right now. You have to make a decision. We have 11 minutes to respond. That's one set of circumstances. I think what was under discussion, the hypothetical that was put to General Hyten, was what if the president comes to the military and says, there's a threat that's out there. It's not going to be felt in 11 minutes, but we've got to do something. I want to use nuclear weapons to make foreign policy happen with North Korea or some other nation. That's a different kind of a conversation. And the assumption there is that there are some hours, days, or even weeks to try and fashion a response. I believe that's what he was really getting at there.
All right, so context now to my historian, Julian Zelizer. Is it common to hear the top U.S. nuclear commander speak about this in the hypotheticals of an illegal order from the president?
No, it's not. I think there's been an assumption at some level that the president is rational, that the president will have some sense of both the risks and the threats of launching a nuclear war. And so some of this discussion is very particular. It's about the current president rather than the president in general. But it does come after many decades where Congress has ceded authority to the president on matters of war, where there's been many warnings that we can't have so much power under the hands of a president. And particularly with nuclear weapons, this is a danger at some point that we will face. And so there's this long view of where this comes from, but this is not a common fear that we have with particular concerns about the president.
All right, so let's listen. Let's get a reminder from back in August when the president was at his resort. This was this August break, and it was the height of the rhetorical back and forth between President Trump and Kim Jong-un of North Korea. And this is what the president said that really frightened some in the diplomatic and military sector. Watch.
North Korea best not make any more threats to the United States. They will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen.
And just this week, Republican Senator and Chair of Foreign Relations, Senator Bob Corker, called a hearing to review the president's orders and potential for calling a nuclear war. And the Democratic member of that committee, Senator Chris Murphy, said this on Tuesday. Let's listen to this.
We are concerned that the President of the United States is so unstable, is so volatile, has a decision-making process that is so quixotic that he might order a nuclear weapons strike that is wildly out of step with U.S. national security interests.
Chris Murphy, a Democrat there. Bob Corker has been very critical of the president and the White House, calling the White House an adult daycare. Errol, does this come down simply to partisan politics, anti-Trump politics, or is it more than that? Is it about this president specifically and a genuine fear that he'll use nuclear weapons?
There's a genuine fear buried in there somewhere underneath the politics, honestly, Victor. I mean, when you hear some of the rhetoric, the president says, fire and fury, the likes of which they've never known. I believe the response by the North Korean leader was, the frightened dog barks loudest. There was some chest thumping and some trash talking going on there that didn't necessarily translate into an imminent or immediate threat. And certainly the Democrats, Murphy and others on Capitol Hill, they want to make the most of this. They want to sort of frighten people a little bit. They want to beat up on the president a little bit, because they do have, of course, a valid point, which is that this is not the right way to make foreign policy. You don't do it with empty threats, loud boasts, or by trying to scare people. In the end, it sounds like the president scared Americans more so than our erstwhile adversaries overseas.
Julian, Senator Jeff Flake of Arizona was asked after that hearing on Tuesday if this hearing would have been held if Hillary Clinton were elected president. He quickly kind of smirked and said, "Don't know," and walked off. And Bob Corker was asked if there is some legislative solution or there's some legislative fix to some of the issues that were raised during that hearing. He said that he didn't know. What is the commitment to some legislative controls on the president's ability to start a nuclear war, to order a nuclear attack?
There's almost no commitment, and I don't think there will be. I think the bias is that Congress would never be able to deliberate with enough speed if we were in a real serious threatening moment to launch a nuclear attack. And so the bias in American politics is not to give Congress that power, and I really don't think that's going to change right now. Congress can try to insert itself more in discussions of national security policy, but I doubt there'll be any greater checks than that. That's why the selection of a president in the nuclear age is so important and so vital, and that's why questions of temperament and questions of policy are essential. And let's remember, presidents have made big mistakes on foreign policy, so the assumption shouldn't be they always get things right, even when they're doing things legally. Just look at Vietnam.